Welcome to Perceptions Today podcast, where we discuss consciousness in all forms. April 2022, episode 23. Vooght joins us to discuss The Spirit in the Sky, part 3 of 3. Vooght is a passionate researcher, along with being an author of The Spirit in the Sky, Ancient Cosmological Gods and Where in the World We Find Them, DMT, Deities, Myths and Tryptamines, and also Devolution Cycle.
I'll let you take over from there.
Yeah. So I agree. I think that there's, we have knowledge and exposure, and specifically, my background is with traditional Western herbalism. I have some understanding of some Chinese medicine and herbalism and Ayurvedic, but primarily it's, I live in North America and it's Western herbalism. And, while I work with plants and I appreciate and see how they work and that they work, I use...
This is an instance of the conversation coming up in the Roundtable discussion. Participants knew it was being recorded.
It's like you're a Democrat or Republican. You're either in this interesting game or you're not. And a lot of the guys I know, a lot of the doctors I know, they know about DMT. I'll guarantee you that, because they do talk about it, but they don't connect it to mystical, spiritual experiences that are transcendental. I mean, they just don't. And they think it's part of the chemistry of consciousness, but they don't understand it, of course. And there's such a block between, it's kind of like the COVID thing, there's such a block between information, anecdotal information, scientific, scientists are always claiming that they're open-minded when the point is they've never been open-minded. I mean, they weren't open-minded about Einstein. They weren't open-minded about Newton. They weren't open about Pasteur. Now, Pasteur, was destroyed for his theories. And so this contest between, God, I hate to use these words, speculative science and real science with italics, it gets so boring after a while that you just want to say, hey guys, can't we all just do this? Can't we just sit down and talk about this? I have dinner with these guys and I talk to them a lot, and they just won't budge. They just won't budge. They have their theories about my problem, that's for sure, but like what he was saying, he has a lot of great information, and there are hundreds of books, and I remember Tyson was talking about the fact that if you go into the physics part of the library, you get about 4 or 5 books, and if you go into the mythological, UFO kind of thing, there are hundreds of books. And that's true. I mean, that is true. But it's just such a shame that we all have these built-in prejudices against open-mindedness when things have been going on, like he said, for thousands of years. It just can't be all coincidence, all accidents. It just can't be. There's got to be more to it. There's a tribe in Africa, for instance, that what did they select as their home? Where did they come from? Orion. Now, they don't know Orion from anybody, but this tribe in Africa, Jung discovered them about 1901 or 1906 or something like that. And they pointed to Orion and said, that's where we come from. We come from there. Now, why? Why would they say that? What's so special about Orion that people like me supposedly come from Orion, and on and on and on. So I think that the conflict between podcasts like this and what Anthony does and what a lot of people do versus the hard science ones from the universities, which are pretty boring. I don't know how you close that gap. I really don't. I mean, the guys that I sit with are every kind of age. Some of them are old guys like me. Some of them are young, right out of medical school. Some of them are, have been in the business for like 15, 20 years and have seen, all kinds of things. But it's just a shame that information in an information age just can't be freely shared without degradation and saying, oh, that's just nonsense. It's just nonsense.
I think it's also the fear factor that people don't want to look like they might be stupid by presenting an idea which can't be backed up yet until more research has been put into it in a way to clarify it.
Well, I think that's absolutely a fact. I mean, the very fact that I told that story 20 years ago, I would never have told that story. Never. I never intended to tell that story because I would just get ridiculed for it. Or they would just, people think, oh, he's just nuts. And then if I mention epilepsy, they just, oh, it's just a product of the brain tumor and it's just illusion and all that kind of stuff. What's interesting about it is that the word Orion came out of a child's mouth who never heard that word spoken except.
Yeah, and you weren't around astronomers, were you, at that point?
No, not at 5 years old. And there was not, and I didn't have a TV. We didn't have a TV until I was like 10. There was no TV. So we had radio, but that's it. So
definitely. I think Trent's got something to put into your conversation that you're asking.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I listen to so many podcasts and read so many books about this stuff that's, things, I guess scientists would call it things we don't know. And then there's all these science podcasts that I give it a hard shake and try and listen, but they're so boring. And it comes down to the fact that we just don't know very much. So going over what we know is that's what universities do. We go over what we know, and it's the very little amount of stuff. But then the fun conversations are when you're talking about things you don't know. And I think even scientists can be engaged on that. They're always so, the ones I listen to and read, they're very focused on, they have something that they've found and they want to share it. And I appreciate the hell out of that. But it's when you can get them on that rant about what they don't know, they'll admit they don't know some things. Let's talk about that. That you see a lot of them light up. And those are the ones that I love watching or listening to podcasts about, hard scientists that come on to people that like to speculate, and they get to loosen up a little bit. Even like Straussman, he was on the Mind Escape podcast and he loosened up a bit. He got to take off his scientist hat where he has to know certain things and got to put on his speculator hat and wildly speculate with the rest of us.
Yeah.
That's always good to be true. I see Dr. M is also going to contribute to your conversation, Myron.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you listen to the scientific, because I listen to those too, and because inside of what they say, well, when they finally get to, well, we really don't know, then that's a step in the right direction, I think, when they say they really don't know. And I know that at dinner with some of my neurologist friends that they admit they don't have a clue. They don't know how to stop it. They don't, in some patients, they don't know how to deal with it. They don't understand the Alzheimer's and MS and all of the neurological. That's the frontier of medicine. And I always ask them, why are you guys in this business? You can't cure anything. You cure very little. Mostly you just observe.
You just answered that it's a business that they are in. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Go on.
Hang on, Dr. M, your audio's a bit peculiar. Do you want to try that again?
Yeah, what was that?
I think he was just a bit too far away from the mic. That's okay.
Sorry about that. Is it better now?
Keep talking for a bit and then I will be able to tell.
Sure.
Yes, clear.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, Myron. You said you don't understand, why they're in this business, and I just jumped in to say that that's the reason. It's a business that they are in. But generally, though, absolutely, there is. My view as a person who went to med school and did internal medicine is that. We know what we know is about a drop, and there is an ocean that we don't know. And after finishing undergrad, my view as a person who hadn't gone to med school yet, in my mind, I thought that medicine knows more than it does now. That I can look back and have that knowledge that would make a person a doctor. Certainly, it's so much unknown, but there's also the problem of science is very much a discipline that deals with obviously verifiable and agreeable external phenomenon, right? So it is not meant to deal with the things that would be either an inner experience or would not be easily repeatable and observable in a way, right? So this limitation is by definition and by nature, but it is sometimes not acknowledged in the sense that an extremely scientific person a lot of the times just begins even subconsciously to not accept anything for which there is not scientific, quote unquote, scientific evidence or proof. And that becomes a very limiting thing for a person. It boxes us. But I did want, I have been at work doing procedures on patients, actually with one ear listening to everything that's been going on in the space. I just got out. I wish that I could speak earlier. I do have a couple of words on psychedelics and DMT, but I don't want to cut Myron off. So if there's an opportunity, I'll share.
Yeah, I just wanted to finish up, and then the answer I got from the doctors was, it's really interesting. That's why I do it. That's why I'm interested, because that's the frontier. If we can solve those issues, what good does it do to live to be 100 and 105, 110 if your brain goes? Then you're just sitting around in a wheelchair. It just doesn't do you any good. So if they can fix all the plumbing, a friend of mine just had open heart surgery and he's fine. But what if his brain goes? What if he gets Alzheimer's or something like that? And so they find it, it's a fascinating field because it's wide open. And I think a lot of them are in it because of that. My wife was a neurologist, so I got a lot of that from them. But it's really interesting what they don't study. They don't study Jung or Freud or any of those people. They're not even in the curriculum. Even if you're going to be a psychiatrist, those people don't come up because it's all about medicine and prevention and treatment and things like that. That's what they focus on in medical school, and that's what my wife was taught. She Jung and Freud and all that were just, there was a few statements about it, and they just went on past it. This is at UCLA, so that's where she got her doctorate. in neurology, and so all of that subjective, what they consider subjective psychiatry and psychology, was just eliminated from the curriculum. They don't even teach it. You'd have to take a class over in psychology, maybe. You might get something over there, but you're not going to get anything in psychiatry from the medical profession. It's just not going to happen. She never did. I had to give her my books and say, hey, read this. Read what Jung talked about. Read this. And it's just, for someone like me who had always looked for answers his whole life, and justification for the kinds of activities that go on inside of me, for science to just blow it off and say, well, we don't know. I think I said, Paul, I think I said in another podcast that I was listening to a Nobel Prize winning physicist, and he was asked, some questions about the universe and how it's put together and this and that. And his answer was that we're just not smart enough. Now, that came from a Nobel Prize winner. So if he says we're not smart enough, he means it. He says, we just can't come up with the math to make this stuff work. Anyway, it really bothers me when I hear what this gentleman said today and how dedicated he is to his information and other writers as well that I've read. And then they're just put in a category of, that's all just allegorical stuff and it's just speculative and it doesn't really mean anything. And then but you can put this in your broadcast if you want to. We did a poll of patients and their doctors, whether they liked their neurologist or not. And out of 1,000 patients that were polled, this is the Epilepsy Foundation doing this, about 90% of them didn't like their doctor. And I think the reason that they didn't like their doctor is that their doctor never gave it to them straight. That's the main reason, I think. Even the parents, when I used to talk at these groups, I used to give these talks to parents about their about what was going on in epilepsy and the foundation, and they were all very frustrated with science. They were just really frustrated. And can you imagine what the neurologist must feel? After a while, you get tired of answering the same question with, I don't know. I'm
definitely with your empathy levels as well with what's going on there. Just some quick information for you. I've just heard from Richard saying that he really enjoyed the fact of the questions and the answers and the people turning up and listening, which is great. I have also been able to supply in the shared section 3 links, which is the Bill Donahue YouTube videos, which he was referring to, and Bill Donahue is talking about the religious texts referring back into brain structures. And also I put up there Vooght's DMT, Deities, Myths and Tryptamine book, where it says the good reads and gives a review and also a description of it. And what was the other one that I put up there? Oh yeah, Laird Scranton on Thursday, which is coming along. Nice to see Barfly. Haven't seen you for a while. Nice to see you, Brad, as well. And Seska, I think you were there or disappeared. And also, I know, Dr. M, you were going to say something.
Yes, thank you. I was going to, we have been talking about DMT, and even though it's been a few years out, back in my younger days, in my quote-unquote reckless days, I tried all manners of psychedelics many times.
Okay for that to be kept in the podcast, or do you want me to edit that out?
No, that's completely okay.
Okay, good, fine. I was just diving for numbers. And
No. Of course, no. I mean, it's I'm just sharing my truth, and
that's fine.
If anyone has any judgments or thinks what they might, that's fine. But yeah, no, definitely, I'm open about this. I mean, to me, my psychedelic experiences are a big part of everything that I am today. So even though I'm 34 now, I think the last time I took any psychedelic, I was 22. So it's been 12 years since then. But those substances, I have never regretted taking them. And actually, for a few years after I stopped, I advocated for them. And then at some point I stopped, and part of me wonders if, I stopped advocating to the general everybody in terms of like advertising psychedelics, because I realized that maybe it's not for everyone. But what I was going to say is that, it's already hard enough to put in words the experience that is the quote unquote trip, But I was trying to think about how, because DMT is much more of an intense experience, I've been thinking about how to describe what was special with DMT over the other psychedelics. It is definitely, at least for me, of course, I can only speak to my experience. DMT was the most psychedelic, the least, the shortest lasting one. But let me say it this way: with mushrooms or LSD and that sort of thing, your perception is distorted, but you're still, the experience is that you're still perceiving, and that perception is dramatically distorted depending on how much and what psychedelic you took. With DMT, the experience comes close to the one time that I shared in the last space. It comes close to that out-of-body experience. And what I mean by that is that rather than being in my body and feeling and perceiving everything, and then feeling that perception is distorted, it was more a sense of being that distortion myself, which is really really strange. Strange in a wonderful, amazing way. I think anyone, would benefit from the psychedelics, should they be a seeker.
I think they should also be educated along those lines beforehand, discussing what, body, because obviously you got people with medical conditions and all kinds of bits in between, and it would be, an educational bit first, not just dive in to whatever substance you find. Because that'd just be wrong.
No, they should not be taken lightly, absolutely. And that, this is the reason that I stopped openly advocating for them, at maybe 25 years old, was that I realized they should not be taken lightly, and then also they're not for everyone. And then it is also true that, you may have, heard of the bad trip, and the idea that as amazing and wonderful as a good experience on psychedelics can be, when it goes the other way around, it's also that intensely in the other direction and bad. And I've had those two actually just one time ever. And that's the, I stopped taking them after that experience, but that's certainly another, liability.
Just to quickly ask you about that, and then obviously sure. I'm going to find out, because obviously Meyer and Trent have got questions to go in with that. Obviously, you've read up on the shamanic experience where, say, for example, if you're using ayahuasca, you go through the destruction of the personality of how bad you've been to other people before showing how you can change your life around, as long as you've started off with the intention with, how do I change this? For example, if you were an alcoholic and you went into the ayahuasca experience on how can I get rid of my alcoholism, and then you'd go through and it sort of strip down your personality and then show you the way out of it. but it would seem like a bad trip, that middle part where you get that hard reality check. Was it that kind of thing or not?
You know what it was for me? So I've only, from probably 200 times of separate times of psychedelic experiences, we're talking about one time that there was a bad trip, and it was on mushrooms. What it was, perception, it was the feeling and the realization on mushrooms that one time that I was, the world, everything around me was so beautiful. And it was just this feeling of not guilt, but the realization that why do I take this substance in order to experience what is? So this is how I was feeling, but during the experience. So it was downward spiraling with a feeling of like, oh my God, there is so much beauty, but this beauty is, and that I shouldn't need a substance to experience it. And then I just kept thinking that, and it was and it lasted a long time, and it was just
hang on, I'm just going to check. Did your audio right?
This it's not guilt. Yeah. Oh, yes.
No, sorry. At one point, your audio sounded like it was being a bit metallic-y. Now, I just want to check to see if Myron has got his hand up for a question, or if not, then it's Trent that's got a question.
Well, Trent can go ahead. I have another question, but
okay.
Trent can go ahead.
I figured I'd just chime in. You guys are talking about my favorite things, so I feel like the DMT experience it's something different. And I've done the, 15-gram heroic doses of mushrooms that people told me would be the same thing, where you kind of lose the consciousness, or you lose your body, and, you have an experience outside of it. And it definitely has a profound impact, and that experience was amazing and hard and difficult, but it still wasn't anything like DMT. DMT is in a category all its own, in my opinion. There's nothing like that. It is shattering, and I did it the wrong way, as many people would say.
So would you say it's like if you were doing mushrooms, or is the equivalent of using crayons and then suddenly trying to read that, and then if you do DMT, it's the equivalent of reading like Tolstoy? You get so much more information out of it.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to compare or explain it. It had nothing to do with not nothing to do. It wasn't just the fact that it was me taken out of and dissociated from my physical reality. There's more to it than that. There's a voice that I've never experienced anywhere else. There's there's meaning that's flowing to you from all sorts of things that would be meaningless elsewhere, which is why it's so hard to describe, and words fail you and images fail you. For me, I wanted to talk about it forever, and I couldn't find the words. And then I tried to draw and paint and create beauty that I experienced in it, but the meaning is lacking then. And music, I've found music that really speaks to the DMT experience, but it still doesn't get there. And then I even dove into 3D animation stuff, because I said, okay, well, if I can't paint it and get the feeling, maybe if I had a VR experience, a metaverse experience of DMT, could that get it there? And I can only brush and touch that area yet, but I already know it's not the whole thing, because the whole thing is without and within all at the same time. It's such a unique experience. And I understand Dr. M's comment saying that you get mad at yourself, like, why do I need this to experience it? But I guess I've come to the point where it's, if you want to experience that, that's how you do it. And it sucks that I can't just make my pineal gland produce and dump DMT whenever I want, but I can go, harvest a plant and get that.
Just to butt in, Trent.
Yeah.
if you talk to Artesian of the Spirit, as in Shadow Fox, she's been telling me that her light work can cause the same effect as a Luthia light machine.
Yeah. And I've played with the light machines.
Well, no, she says that her her light work, she can teach you how to do that endogenously through your own system rather than having to use a plant. So it'd be interesting to get novices who have got no knowledge to people who've done almost everything and get Shadow Fox to see if she can break it down in simple ways for us to learn that, and then we can all compare notes.
Yeah, no, I have. On my search, I've tried to find ways to get there otherwise. You know, for me, that's been super important because my kids are young and I want them to understand why their dad's so weird, you know, and I can't give them DMT, but if I can
You're not weird, you're just one of the special people.
Yeah. So, but I wanted to find ways, and I've tried like holotropic breathing and, you know, all these different methods, deep meditation, yoga, and I've done the exploring to see how can I touch that without the plant. But the message I keep getting slammed in the face with is, why not the plant? It's there, and it's bringing it to us. This experience is brought to us by another, what I consider sentient being on this planet, and I don't have to have it all inside me. I can reach out and get help. Sometimes that's from a friend. Sometimes that's from a stranger, and other times it's from a plant. And that plant is going to give you that experience, whether you're its friend or not, whether you believe in it or not, whether you respect it or not. It's still going to give you that experience, and it's a pretty miraculous freaking thing. And I love RN's connection to Acacia, and then I chase that down the rabbit hole. P.D. Newman goes into it, the whole history of masonry and how it's built on this Osiris Acacia myth, and that's just astounding. Throughout human history, this plant has brought us to some crazy places, and yet it's got to be hidden, and it always has to be hidden. And I hate that it has to be hidden. I want to scream it from the rooftops and tell everybody.
Oliver Sacks was working on it big time before he passed away. And because I was working with him, and I don't know if you know who Oliver Sacks is or not, but he's a neurologist who's written a lot of books, and he did really, really pioneering research in a lot of areas. And he took all of those drugs that everybody talks about. In fact, I've taken a few of them myself. And it's interesting that my experience is I don't need any drug at all. When I took ayahuasca, that didn't do anything, and when I took peyote, that didn't do anything, and anything that I don't already have because of this tumor in my head. I think that I don't know if that's a doorway or what it is, but what everybody describes, I already see it anyway. So I don't need to take any drugs. And Oliver Sacks and I were going to work on that. And then he passed away, unfortunately. And so it's interesting that, and I know that there are Sufis and certain teachers who have those experiences without any drugs, using meditation, but it takes years, but they do it. And I agree with you that the experiences on certain substances like ayahuasca or peyote or something are nothing like DMT, nothing. Because what happened to me when I took those others, I didn't get anything out of those that would be even close to what I get in my normal reactions to, you want to call it seizure, or, visualization, hallucination, whatever it is. Um, I, I I wouldn't trade what I get out of that with any of those experiences. I think that what I experience is a DMT experience. And I don't know if it's because my brain somehow is connected to the DMT that's in it and it makes it work. I don't know. And no one has been able to figure that out either. None of the doctors or anybody. But I do know that I have some of the things that everybody talks about. I have no fear of death at all. And I'm getting closer to death every day. I mean, I'm pushing 80. So, and I've seen things and that were just overwhelmingly gorgeous and wonderful and life-changing. I mean, there are places I've been and seeing things I've seen that when I read accounts of people that have been on DMT, I go, yes, okay. They're seeing the same things that I have seen. And it's kind of, I don't understand why. I've asked a lot of people since I see hundreds of thousands over the 20 years I've been working in epilepsy. I've seen probably pretty close to 25,000 patients of one kind or another. And a lot of those people have similar experiences with mine. And not exactly the same, but very similar. Not all of them, because they don't all have TLE, and they all and it has to be in a certain place, and mine happens to be in the hippocampus and all that stuff. So when you take DMT, I think it opens that door of perception in a very unique way. And it has nothing to do with a psychedelic. A psychedelic is a whole different experience, because I've done both, and I'm here to tell you that my experiences, I wouldn't trade that for any psychedelic experience that I've had, because they're just not interesting enough, and they're not complete enough, and they don't make you feel like, like you're part of the universe. I mean, they're just, so when I do my art, which is a reflection of what I see and all that stuff, it's like I get to relive it over and over and over again by just looking at the images. And it's a shame that science isn't real. Maybe science is pounding on DMT a lot more than they're talking about, because there were people like Oliver Sacks he was going to go big into research on DMT, or he already had, and he had taken every drug that there was to take. So
I'm just going to pause you there, because Dr. M has had his hand up for a while and then is down, but they might have got something to introduce into your topics that you've just been talking about.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I haven't been looking at the screen and didn't realize my hand was still up.
Okay.
I think I did have something, but it's long gone. So if I remember,
you can always put it up later.
Absolutely.
Down. I don't know. I can't get first time sitting and talking to you, so I'm going to have to ask you a few questions.
Yeah. So
how did you find us?
I just stumbled upon you. But real quick, I mean, the whole psychedelic experience, the DMT experience, I'm curious what people feel about, like Richard Alpert, who did a lot of different substances. And then at the end, he pretty much abandoned all of them, and he went towards meditation and spirituality. And I'm just curious why that happens sometimes, as opposed to just seeking out the substance. So I would be curious everyone's thoughts on that, because I am interested in Richard Alpert and how he processed information, and Timothy O'Leary and all that. So
I'm
Excellent.
curious.
You stumble in the right room. Can I just quickly get a bit of a clue about yourself? Because obviously I can tell you that if you stumbled in here, we talk about consciousness in all forms. We have different people that come and talk, whether it be from traumatic brain injuries, or we start talking about things which are lucid dreaming, or we go into plant cognition and intelligence and what is reality, all those kind of things. We have a podcast, we're interested in psychedelics, lots of things that we like to discuss. So does this fit with yourself? And roughly where do you kind of fit into the world, and where in the world are you, roughly, give or take?
Yeah, I'm a physician, and I handle a lot of people who are dying of cancer.
Okay.
And so I'm all ears about trying to soften suffering and make their experience in this plane as relevant and meaningful as possible. So that's really what drew me in.
Superb.
Yeah. So
if you like the kind of content, follow us, because we got other people talking as well that come up. We got events, but I'm going to hand you over to Trent Stevens of Continuing the Conversation, who's T-Rex and knows a lot about this, as well as Dr. M as well.
I guess what I would add is, or how I would respond to that is, those guys got the message from those drugs, and then they, like me, search to find another way. And I truly believe Richard Alpert found another way to get there, and he tried to teach others and get them there. But I've heard him say it in speeches where, it's a lot of work. It's a whole lot of work. Like I'm a handyman, jack of all trades. And I'll rip a whole house apart to try and solve one tiny little problem. But then my wife will come in, who knows nothing about electricity, and I will have taken a whole electric box apart, and she'll notice that whatever I was frustrated by wasn't plugged in. And I guess that's how I'd relate it is, you can do 20 years of deep meditation and remove yourself from society and holotropic breathe and light work and all that. And I think there's great value in that. But to get the message, all you have to do is ingest a plant in some way. So it's like a shortcut. And I've heard all those great minds talk about the shortcut, and they seek to find a way to not need it. And those methods help them get there. But none of them got there on the natch. They found the way to get there on the natch, but they started with a kick to the pants. And for me, it was stubbornness. Like, I could never have sat down and meditated for 15 minutes. And now I meditate hours a day, but because I've been kicked in the pants by this thing. And I don't think it's something you need to turn to every day. I think it's a powerful catalyst. It doesn't make changes. It doesn't change you. It's a powerful catalyst that kicks you hard square in the pants and makes you perk up. And then from there, what you do with that message that's up to you.
That's really encouraging, but I have a question.
Yeah.
I mean, this is very, very interesting and very encouraging. The question is, and I don't know how much, non-dualism or Advaita meditation philosophy you've engaged with, but how do we know that none of this is just not an illusion that we're being attracted to because of our ego space?
It is an illusion, right?
Right. As opposed to the real thing, So that's curious, right? How do you know you're not getting trapped in the experience?
Yeah.
There's a lot of us who've had head injuries who have been kind of bounced out of, let's just say, your body for a while, and you're actually picking up images without having physical optical sensors and things like that. And that's quite fascinating as well to put into the encounter. And those that have, when we've been discussing near-death experiences, again, when we've been discussing it, there's 17 different areas that you can have that can actually qualify as a near-death experience, but you don't actually have to physically die, and it doesn't have to be for minutes. It can be fractions of seconds and things like that. So it's quite amazing how time stands still. You get precognition about the events. So you don't have to have the drug. Well, the drug is going to be released into your system through stressing environments like death, like DMT is put through, because it overpowers, obviously, the liver enzyme. And you get shown these other things. And there's enough of us that we've been talking about have seen these things, whether it's be fractions of seconds car accidents or full-blown, operating table routine. So that you have to put that into the mix to say there's more than just the psychedelic in the plants as well, don't you, Trent?
Absolutely.
Well, I think that in my case, my proof of the experience is not just being a hallucination brought on by brain tumor, is it's visceral. In other words, I'm actually pulled into it. Now, okay, you can say that's an illusion too. I mean, you can rationalize anything you want, but when I'm pulled into an experience, I mean literally pulled into it, I feel it. It starts with my body sitting, and then all of a sudden I am being pulled into this experience, and then I'm in it. Now, it doesn't feel like that's coming from my brain. It's coming from my solar plexus in my body. And it goes, and there are a lot of meditators in India that have that same experience. Now, if they have the same experience and it's exactly the same experience, then that means that the brain is triggered by something. And whatever they're doing in their meditation is triggering it. So there's validity to the fact that it's there and it does produce certain kinds of experiences. And in my case, when it's coming, I can feel it coming from like afar off. Like I had one day before yesterday that I did a painting of, but I can feel it like it's coming. And Dostoevsky, the writer, talks about that too, that you can feel like it's coming. It's headed your direction. You just know it's headed your direction. And then all of a sudden...
Yeah, because you call that the aura then, don't you? You call that an aura.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you get, an aura is really a seizure. They just call it an aura. But anyway, so you feel it coming, and then it arrives, or it doesn't arrive. Sometimes it doesn't arrive, and sometimes it does arrive. And when it does, it starts pulling my body towards it. And I go right into it, and then I'm in it, and I'm not getting out of it until it's over. And I don't want to get out of it. As a matter of fact, I would like to stay there forever. I would be perfectly happy doing that. But I have things to do, and that's a big subject. But my point is that Dostoevsky was asked if we could cure your auras, your seizures, would you take a cure? And he said, absolutely not. I absolutely would not, because the things I feel are so magical and so wonderful and so transpersonal and so...
Myron, I think your audio is going a bit peculiar. I'm just going to check with Krista. Krista, can you hear him properly?
No, he's kind of going in and out. I thought maybe it was my reception.
Yeah, I just always like to check with, otherwise people lose content. So if we go to Dr. M and then obviously yourself, Krista, and then Trent, and then we're trying to get Myron back with the right audio once we try and figure out what goes on. Are you okay being referred to as down and out?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I've just put into your direct messaging box in Twitter 3 different videos which you might enjoy, might not, but they're full of information. They're the standard 3 that I tend to give to people to just get a grounding of where we're talking and where we're looking at on consciousness and other medical bits and related to anesthesiology and where consciousness is and things like that. So if they sound okay to you, you might enjoy them.
Yeah. So
Don't
I have a
have
question.
to come back. Sorry.
So, quick question. So if you have an internal receptor pathway that you can engage with an external plant, we know that receptor agonist exists internally, endogenously. We just have to figure out how to get there, correct?
Definitely, like the CB1 and CB2 receptor cells in the brain when you're going through that way. I want to make sure that obviously Dr. M, Krista, and Trent obviously get back to you, and then we get Meyer and then.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks again. Down. What is the account name? Down Out. You said how do you know that it's not an illusion, like the psychedelic experience? I think one of the things that psychedelics do for a person that has never again just did for me as compared with when I had never taken them was this realization that there is no reality outside of perception of it, right? And I mean, it's even, is very rational, because considering that you only get to live inside yourself for your lifetime, and that it's not possible for you to experience, all that is from any other person's vantage point, then really your perception is the reality. So to your question of, what if it's an illusion? So the psychedelic experience, like, let me say it this way, right? So when you take that substance and the things that you feel and that you see are very much real to you, right? And if the whole world, if the 8 billion people were to say that, no, this synesthesia you're experiencing, or this visual hallucination you're having, or auditory hallucination you're having is not happening, it wouldn't really change anything about the realness of that experience for a person. And then ultimately our perception is neurochemically and electrically mediated, right? So that system is set up the way that it is in the composition of the body and in the working of our I guess sensory systems, right? But we can't be fooled into thinking that there is a reality out there that is independent of our perception, right? At least that's how I feel. But before taking any psychedelics, I really thought that, no, there is an objective reality out there that is independent of my perception. Now, there is agreed upon reality, and science really is a discipline that it deals with only the things that are outwardly and obviously and repeatably observable or able to be perceived and agreed upon. Someone mentioned that these substances are a shortcut to understanding, or in paraphrasing, I don't know what they exactly said. I think that's very true. Someone else mentioned that the idea
that was Trent.
Trent, okay, yes, sorry about that.
Okay.
I haven't been looking at the screen, so
I keep an eye on what's going on.
Thank you, I appreciate that. It is that they are a shortcut, right? Because that has been my experience too, right? So I took many psychedelics from 18 to 22, and then have not taken it for 12 years. Now there's two things. Those visual hallucinations, auditory hallucinations, and synesthesia, which that one not everyone experiences, right? These are temporary alterations for the basically duration of the action of that drug, which is in the order of hours. But the understanding and the epiphanies about life, about yourself, the understanding of the connection that you feel between everything that is, the feeling that you're not separate from everything else, that what you used to formerly maybe think of as yourself being where the border is your body, your skin, let's say. That's sort of an understanding that you are connected, and that really what's out there is in some way a part of yourself. Basically the wonder and the understanding of the beauty of existence, this part of those experiences is permanent, right? So for me, it's been 12 years out now, and I really, the non-hallucination parts, which is everything else I just tried to kind of speak to, those are in my part of my being and part of my understanding as fresh as they were 1 month out from my psychedelic experiences. And I have heard this from others too. I don't know if I Bill and what is it, Steve Jobs, and I'm not sure if it was Bill Gates, but possibly. There is many folks, whether famous or not is irrelevant, but that have taken these things at some point early in life and that have had their epiphanies, but then at some point they never really had a reason to take the substance again.
Alan Watts said you hang up the phone once you get the message, and that was one of the big quotes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, very much so. To me, yeah, okay, it is different to experience a distorted perception or a synesthesia or an auditory hallucination. Sure, that's interesting. That could be intriguing to many people. But to me, the reason I would ever advocate psychedelics is the rest of the things that I try to speak about. That understanding of really yourself and really the unity with all that is. That's an incredible thing to experience, and it stays with you, for in 12 years, though that part of it has not been at all forgotten or it almost it's like when you have a vivid dream that you wake up from and then you thought the dream was reality, but then you wake up and the real world feels less real than the dream, and it takes you a minute to actually kind of get used to that this is, the waking life is actually reality. It's kind of like that. And I think that's incredible that you can take a substance, something with so little effort, and to take away so much permanently from it.
That's a good point. I'm just going to give a call that in the next half hour I'll be closing the room. So I just want to make people aware of that. So kind of brief answers and questions. Krista?
Hello?
Sorry, yeah, I'm here. Yeah,
good.
I guess I'll just
pause.
I had to get back to the app to unmute
That's
my
fine.
mic.
I just thought, pick the wrong person.
I'll just piggyback on what Dr. M said. And down and out, it was, can you repeat the question about the meditation and the plants? Because I wanted to give an answer, and then, it's been a while enough where I don't want to answer something that maybe you weren't asking. Can you just repeat it?
Yeah. So,
thank you.
I've never actually taken any substance outside of alcohol, but what I had a remarkable experience in meditation that has brought me to a place like, Dr. M talked about. And so the reason I asked the question was, why not go after the endogenous, substance as opposed to utilizing an external substance? Because everything that has a receptor that there's an agonist for, from an external point of view, has that same agonist internally. So why not go through that route? Because then you can really be sure that the experience you're having is tempered by your awareness. That's really what I was going after. I'll let you take over from there.
Yeah. So I agree. I think that there's, we have knowledge and exposure, and specifically, my background is with traditional Western herbalism. I have some understanding of some Chinese medicine and herbalism and Ayurvedic, but primarily it's, I live in North America and it's Western herbalism. And, while I work with plants and I appreciate and see how they work and that they work, I use, and I have used psychedelics in the past, and, I have been on my own spiritual path my entire life. I don't think that they are kind of the end game to get to this point. And I think that you can use them to get an idea of what truth and realization can be. I think that you can kind of take like a helicopter flight to see what the top of the mountain looks like. But ultimately, I feel like doing work like meditation is what actually carries you up to the mountain, if that makes sense. Seeing how medicine, natural herbal medicine works, you were kind of the plant is being an ally carrying you on a journey, but there's a certain point where you have to get off and finish it. And while I think there's a place for it to help people, like Trent said, kind of give you a kick in the pants, it's just kind of pushing you along and being that catalyst. But for me, it is that you do have to kind of get to it humbly in a way. And meditation is a new practice for me. But meditation has been a practice of acceptance, where you're not trying to stop thoughts, you're accepting thoughts and accepting where you're at and accepting things that come through. And I don't feel like you can really truly do that if you're getting there on the coattails of an external substance, if that makes sense.
I really agree with that. I think that Westerners, for some reason, don't want to do the hard work that it takes to maturation of these experiences. It's one thing to have an experience that gives you this euphoria and lack of fear of death and all that, maybe once or twice, and then it's another thing to make it, an educational, total internal transformational experience that most people don't want to spend the time to do, because there's a cost to that. I mean, it takes time, and I wish I could find a doctor who could explain to me how I could be out 8 hours. I mean, I have a seizure, and the seizure can't last more than 2 minutes or 3, or you're going to be dead. So I come out of the seizure, and my consciousness is altered sometimes 6 and 7 and 8 hours, and I see another dimension, another world for that long, and no one has been able to explain that. No one. And so where does my brain go when I'm there? When I'm in that other reality? I wish somebody could explain it to me. I mean, I've got mystical explanations by the dozens, but I don't have any scientific explanation by anyone. Any neurologist at any level has never been able to explain to me how in the world I could have altered consciousness for 8 hours. It's kind of like, like if you have a concussion. I always use the Steve Young analogy.
Myron, your audio's going in and out at the moment.
Okay,
I don't know what's
right here.
different at the moment. Meanwhile, while that trying to get sorted out, we'll get T-Rex in and then get back to yourself, obviously, down now.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate all those comments. I think that's spot on. You can see the top of the mountain with these substances, but that's not the goal, right? You don't just want to stand on top of, climbing Everest. Nobody climbs Everest to live there. They climb Everest for a change of perspective or some achievement for themselves or someone else. And we don't get there to stand on top of the mountain forever. We do it because the perspective that we gather from there it's life-changing, life-changing completely. And I agree that getting there on the natch often becomes many psychedelic fanatics. That's becomes the goal, is how do I get there on the natch? How do I do it without the exogenous and do it all endogenously? It becomes like it can become addictive, just trying to find that way there. And I don't even think that's the whole point. I really look at it as this catalyst, and it's not something that I haven't partaken in years, maybe a year now, because I just haven't, the phone didn't need to ring. I had the message I needed. My life has become completely different than it was pre-DMT. And sometimes, though, my stubborn self needs that kick again. Sometimes the message gets blurry. I get blown off track, and I've tried so hard to build tools to get me back there. And that's how, I have very strong meditation practice, and I have a lot of other tools, modalities that I've used to kind of ground me to remain where I understand that everything around me is the divine, and appreciate that and love that and love it. Just love.
Can I ask you, Trent, if you're moving around or not?
Not at all. I'm sitting still.
Okay. It seems that the problem that Myron had has been transferred to you. Could you put yourself on mute and then take yourself off mute and then talk? See if that clears yours up.
Yeah, we'll try that.
Okay.
That was just all a long rant. My real question was asking, I guess, the room, but Myron as well, having to do.
Hang on, before you ask a question, you were referring back to Down and Out got his hand up. Let's just check with Down and Out if what you said was right, and then we can throw what you've got to the room. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, really quickly, you just triggered my thought here. So, that space of love that you realize everything around you is part of you, that kind of spiritual process, you have that, and it changes you for good. You never ever go back to the cynical person that you may have been, but then you deal with somebody who's extremely, extremely cynical. How shelter yourself from the negativity that seems. So I'm curious how other
Don't
people.
tell me we lost Down and Out. Hang on 1 second, Down and Out. I think we lost about 3 or 4 seconds of what you were saying.
So yeah, just curious how you handle that. How do you engage with folks around you who haven't got there? So I'm curious what other people think, because I like about, and also the last speaker who spoke, you find this space of love, and everything around you is just this immense beauty all the time. But then you have people who aren't seeing it that way, and they are all about, greed, power, et cetera, et cetera. So curious what people think.
Well, I'll personally chime in and say I have to be able to ground myself and remember that frustrating person in front of me, just like you said, is part of me. They're having an experience, and it's built on whatever their experience was. And as frustrating as their behavior might make me, I have to recognize the divine in them and realize, if I truly believe this is all one and we're all one, that's me right there having a bad day.
And also, it's not possibly the right time for them as well. You can't be harsh on them. You got to either repitch the idea in a different way, or just go, okay, and then step back and wait for another time, because they might not have had enough life experience to make them appreciate what you're saying or what others say or where you're directing them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I guess what I was going to get back to, and I appreciate everything that everyone has said, but ultimately the finger always ends up pointing back at me. And I don't know how other people have had the same experience. Wait a second, I'm the one who's being judgmental about that person.
Amen. Preach.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, man, I can't change anyone. I can only change myself. So there's only one way to even approach it.
That's right. That is right.
Yep. Okay, well,
right.
I'll step back and let somebody else speak.
And also for yourself, Down now, I've also put into your direct messages, there's a woman who obviously is in one of the 3 videos that I've put there, is Dr. Penny Satori. She wrote a book which is called The Transformative Powers of Near-Death Experiences. And she and another woman who attempted suicide, when she obviously realized what had happened and come back, they obviously went and talked to a few other people as well. And a lot of people ditched the kind of materialism and looked at ways of helping others along the way. And when they kind of reviewed the experiences they had, kind of in a time period after that, they were still in the same state. They hadn't actually reverted back again. They kind of the whole viewpoint had changed. Krista?
I was just going to answer down and out. At this point, I kind of just I kind of chuckle and laugh when I keep coming back to Plato's cave. You can't describe the shadows or the illusion when you've been out. And so when you come back into the cave and you're surrounded by people that haven't escaped yet, you just have to kind of laugh, and accept that people are exactly where they're at on their journey. There's nothing you can do to force people to walk out of the cave to see the illusion.
If you think about it, when the Dalai Lama is interviewed, not one word comes out of his mouth about the Chinese, not any negative, nothing negative about the Chinese who killed most of his people, murdered them. And you hear me saying it, he would never say that. He's just not there. He doesn't think of them that way. He never is negative about the Chinese, and he has every right to be. He's on a death list for them. If he were to come back to China, they would arrest him.
I actually had a conversation with him once, and he actually said, "You have to help them." That's
exactly. I mean, that's the difference between this prolonged spiritual experience and some mountaintop thing that changes you for a while, or maybe, most people, most religions, you can have mountaintop experiences even without drugs. If you go to conventions and stuff, and there's a lot of teaching, and there's a lot of prayer, and there's a lot of fasting, and there's a lot of wonderful spiritual events that you can go to. And when you're there, man, your life changes. And then you go back to work, and then the phone rings, and you've got to deal with all this stuff, and you got to deal with all this crazy stuff that, blah, 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 blah. Well, the Dalai Lama, it doesn't bother him one way or the other about how the world is going, because that's not part of his consciousness. He's completely removed from the drama and angst of that. So something is different when you do this over long periods of time and you stay with it. I don't mean taking drugs. I mean going on the experience, taking that walk down the road, as Joseph Campbell would say. There's something it does to you that makes you different than other people. You don't have the same kind of reactions. You don't have the same kind of hate or mistrust or whatever negative you want to come up with. And there's got to be a reason. For all of the thousands and thousands of Indians in India who meditate their whole lives, they're not the same people that a lot of Westerners are. I remember when the 60s, when everybody ran over to India to become enlightened all of a sudden, I guess they thought they were going to, and then they'd come back and they'd just be who they were, because they didn't want to do that long, hard work. They didn't want to sit and meditate. They didn't want to do any of that stuff, and it just faded, and they went back to work, and their lives went on. And because I lived through that generation, and most of that stuff just faded into just little groups like this.
Well, it's a practice, it's like having a houseplant. You can buy the houseplant and you can take pictures of it, but it will die if you don't water it and give it fertilizer and move it around and give a bigger pot as it grows. I mean, it's a language. You have to nurture it. And, some people might feel like they don't have time for something like a meditation or a practice or even an exercise regime. And it's not that you don't have time, it's you don't make time for it. So people that make time for this kind of exploration, and you're strengthening it like a muscle, or honing your antenna, or sharpening your saw, whatever metaphor you want to use, it is a continuous thing that should be folded into your daily life if you want it to continue and grow and expand. And you can't just buy a book and have it on your shelf and feel like you're enlightened. That's kind of, again, you just have to chuckle. Like, maybe the person that does that will get there eventually. Maybe they won't. Maybe it's not in their cards this time around to get there. So I don't disparage anybody wherever they are in their path. If they're crossing my path, they're doing it for a reason. Usually, like Trent said, or Down and Out said, it's the finger points back at you. It's a reflection of wherever you're at. So again, like acceptance and compassion for other people, and don't cast your judgment against them, because you really are just judging yourself because you were once there too.
Sure, no question about it. And there's just something about that path that changes the way that you judge the world. Even Christ said, love your enemies, love those that hate you. And when you hear those phrases, you just kind of go, yeah, right. That's sure going to work. Well, it does work. I mean, there are people that do feel that way. They don't judge their enemies. They don't hate their enemies. They love them. They want them to be better. They want them to be free. They want them to be, to be part of the thing that they want more than they really want to be, their negativity, so to speak. And I agree with you. You take the drug and you have the experience, and then you go about your life. Well, maybe the experience, many are called, but few are chosen. There's a scripture in the Bible that says that. I think that the DMT can call you, but if you don't do anything with it, it'll be taken from you.
That's what the universe does the same thing.
That's what the scripture's talking about.
The universe does the same thing and puts you right in the path of what you should be doing. If you ignore it several times, it will push you intensely. So I know T-Rex wants to say something, and Gabe, I know that you've got yourself up into the game and the mix, which is good. So Trent?
Yeah, I actually have to run, but I just wanted to throw a name out there. I was wondering if Myron had heard of Sean Thornton before. He's an artist that had like pineal tumor.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just curious if others had run across him, because I think his story is
give a quick overview. Overview, Trent.
So Sean had a tumor in his brain, and it produced these crazy images, and his artwork is just phenomenal. It's one of the closest to the DMT experience that I've seen. It's just unlike anything else, which is how I describe a DMT experience. It's unique and completely different, and he captures it. But then his tumor was removed, and his artwork is still crazy. But he said that his experiences, I guess, had kind of fell away with that being removed. And I don't know the science of what happened to him or any of that. I love his art, and I know it had to do something with a brain tumor. And
I think Anthony Peake interviewed him. I'm not too sure if my brain's recalling it. I'm just pulling up a website, and we're talking Sean with a W, yeah?
Yes, SHAWN.
Yeah, so I've got him, yeah. I'll put that into the shared section.
It's fantastic.
I mean, it's one of the reasons why when people look at my art that, I've never gotten a bad review, because I've shown all over the world, because nobody's ever seen anything that looks like my work ever.
Right.
And it's all because it comes from this part of the brain that is cut off from most people's experience. And that happens to a few artists, not very many. Most of it's contrived, no matter how surreal it may look, it's not really that surreal. It's really structured and thought out and brilliantly rendered, but it's not surreal. It doesn't come from a place of knowledge. It comes from a place of knowing how to make these images and how to make them look. And when you run across an artist like the one you were just describing, and myself, you'll see that is so different than anybody else's that there's no explanation for it. And that's all the newspapers I've ever gotten reviews in, they've always said the same thing, and that is we don't know how to review this because we just don't know where this comes from. We've never seen anything like that. And I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that what that is that's that experience inside of me that's creating the images. I don't take responsibility for that. I don't even take the glory for it. I always say, hey, this is this energy that's inside of me. It has nothing to do with Myron Dial. It has to do with this energy that is inside of me and wants out and wants to be recorded. So I make a record of it. And then I do other paintings that are, autobiographical, but the ones that are archetypal and the sculptures that are archetypal,
I think one of the best things that you told me, Myron, was that at one stage you never wanted to actually put it out there. And it's the fact that the energy and Karen actually said, no, you got to put it out there, which is
absolutely
a fascinating thing, because so many people that I've come across organically were doing things for themselves, whether it be writing books, well, not writing books, collecting data or doing art, and then something else pushes them to actually put it into the public domain. And they've never really wanted to do it. They weren't looking to grab the limelight. It was just something that needed to get out there.
Yeah, that's right. And it has a life of its own, and that life of its own, supersedes your ego. I was scared to death to let people see my stuff. First of all, I thought it would take away my career and everything else. And it ultimately did that. But it gave me a new career, but it did take the old one away. But the artists are artists. There aren't many artists that are spiritual artists. Most of them are, playing games with culture and stuff. But there are some that are, and that includes musicians too, by the way. Since I'm a musician as well as an artist. But yeah, you're right. I did not want to show this to anybody ever. That I never intended to do that. I intended to take it to Burning Man and burn it all 7,000 works.
Sorry about laughing there, Myron. I just heard Tigger was making a contribution. Meowing in the background.
Yeah, that's my black cat. It's okay to.
Excellent. Now, I have to say, we're into the last 15 minutes at least, so if anybody wants to say anything, I know, Gabe, you wanted to get up there. And evening, Estevel, nice to see you. Haven't seen you for a while, which is good. And also, Mark Allen, nice to see you in. And Miro. Gabe, did you want to say something? Oh, you can't talk at the moment. So, Trent?
Yeah, I'll just say farewell. I appreciate the chat. This is a great topic, and it all started with a chat with the magnificent, wonderful RN Vooght. So what a great day. Thank you.
Oh, definitely. Thank you for coming along and spending your time, because I know how busy you are during the day.
Yeah, I wouldn't miss this one. So thank you.
Hopefully we will have other ones that you won't want to miss. And I'm just going to basically say in the top there, I've put the artist Sean Thornton as well, his website. And again, on Thursday, we've got Laird Scranton coming. And obviously, if you want to come to that, it's a Zoom one. You'll need to register, and we will be doing it at 7 o'clock UK time.
Awesome.
It will be good. Hopefully you'll be there.
I will try.
No, that's the Zoom. That's the Zoom one, right?
Okay, Myron, I couldn't hear that at all. Sorry.
Is that the Zoom one?
That's the Zoom one, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great.
That'll work well.
That's Thursday, right?
That's Thursday coming up, yeah.
Okay. All right.
I was lucky enough to be able to get two going on at the same time.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised, but yeah, that's cool.
Nice.
All right. Well, I'm going to go too, and it was great. I thought the discussion was really, really great.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, because it's just nice to have so many different topics that come in and overlay, and we find combinations. It's good.
Yeah, I think so too. And And I don't, and I live pretty much by myself, and I don't get to discuss this much with people. So it's great to have a forum to do it on. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts, but it's anyway. So I am going to feed my cat, who is just complaining, and I'm going to go feed myself, which is even more important.
Definitely.
And then I'll see you on Thursday, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise.
Definitely. Fingers crossed for everybody being there who wants to be there, which is great.
Indeed. Bye-bye.
Bye. So Gabe had a bad signal and he went out again. So if anybody wants to say anything, now's the time to raise your hand to get the invitation so you can talk.
I'll just talk since I'm the only other speaker. Thanks, Paul, again. I'm glad I get to jump on at the end.
Oh, no problem. It's nice that you can bounce in and out multiple times. It's good fun when you get the opportunity with these things.
And I'll see you on Thursday. I might be a little late, but I'll.
That's okay. We've definitely got an hour and a half, so that will be fantastic with going over all the different topics and cultures.
Nice. Thanks. Ciao.
No problem. Bye. Last chance if you want to raise your hand to have a quick chat. I'll give you the opportunity, Gabe. See if your signal got any better. Suddenly all these ones have gone to connecting and... Right. Miro, nice to see you. Right. I know Miro's phone's always has an issue where he can't get hold of it. Otherwise we'd just be talking to silence. No, it's all going wrong. Sorry, Brad, everybody else. Right. So you can't talk, unfortunately. Right. That's not a problem. So as I said, we've been getting events in, and if you've recently turned up and don't realise, we've got Laird Scranton on Thursday, UK time, 7 p.m, and that's a Zoom one. And then we've got on the 22nd, we got Mike Fiorito doing his one on imagination, consciousness, and revolution. And then on the 23rd, we've got Stephanie Quick doing her one on synchronicity at 7 p.m. And then we go to April, and then that would be the 6th of April. We got Anthony Peake doing 2 sessions, a 9 until 11, and then 3 till 5 on a meet and greet. And again, those will be good ones and events, and they're all in the link which is attached to this account. Mark.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well.
I'm navigating Los Angeles today, so mostly been. I wanted to just thank you. I promote your space and your shows a lot in my places, and really value the contributions that you make, that you have on. It's always enlightening.
Thank you very much for saying that. Hopefully the audio went well for everybody else who's coming in and out with obviously where you're driving, but it's the community and the people that come and chat. It's amazing what we've been finding out recently with what's been going on. So again, if people want to listen into Mark's topics of conversation, and you'll find them in the bio, he does very good conversations as well, and you bring people in who know their things and allow you to speculate in a nice, calm manner and converse as well. So that's great. So this is it. Sorry, Mark.
I was going to say that we were super fortunate to have Gary Nolan last week on, and there's I think it's on my landing page. About a 4-hour conversation, but it was really fantastic, and a lot of the things that we had suspected about him, he came out and started discussing. So I know it's a 4-hour chat. I think maybe the last 2 hours are the best, but many of the topics that you cover with brain damage, remote viewing, automatic downloads. He touched on all of that. So he gave us some really great insight, which was cool. And again, gosh, man, these spaces that you're doing are just really incredibly valuable.
All I can say is it's the people, and they're all making the time to come out all the day and come and play in our sandbox. And it's nice of you to be here on our 6-month anniversary. which is quite amazing.
Woohoo!
I know. Will we make it to the 7th month? This is what's the thing to find. So all fun and games.
You'll make it for sure. All right, I got to jump off. I hope you guys have a lovely day.
And yourselves, I'm going to make it that way as well. If anybody else wants to say goodbye or hello, I'm literally going to do it in the next 2 minutes, shutting down the room. Well, then nobody's putting their hands up. Okay, well, everybody have a good time, and thank you very much for turning up for this event, and it has been fantastic. Remember, if you want to come and talk to Laird Scranton on Thursday, go and hit the invitation in the Zoom link.
To help our research and understanding, leave Perceptions Today's podcast reviews, subscribe to the podcast, along with the other social media accounts, and share. Come and join our live events. That way we can get together and have thoughtful discussions along with advancing our understanding of concepts as we go along.